some teachings are like sex is bad and wrong. Tantra will go into that and be like, how is this incredible versus disassociating, disconnecting from it. And so tantric sex is going in and accepting all parts of yourself, working with the energy, sending the energy through your body, learning how to channel that creative life force through your body to expand your consciousness, to have spiritual experiences through sex and intimacy with yourself or with another, or, with a whole bunch of people. So not creating the shame or what's right or wrong, but instead just bringing that loving acceptance to everything.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. I'm Bob Nickman. My guest today is Brittney Bliss, and we are going to be talking about her work as a somatic sex coach. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to all the episodes, see photos of my guests, read synopses of the episodes, little bio on myself, and there's a donate button if you'd like to support the show that will also give you access to some extra content. There's also a YouTube channel where you can listen to the episodes. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. And there's the Exploding Human Facebook page. So you have a lot of places you can listen to the show. My guest today is Brittney Bliss. Brittney is a somatic sex coach. If you want to find out exactly what that is, you're going to listen to this episode. And she talks about how she got into this field. And we talk about tantric sex and holistic sex, body, mind, and spirit, bringing all elements together to have a fulfilling and happy sex life. And also her latest venture into wilderness retreats. So please listen in. This is Brittney Bliss. Let's start with the idea of what you told me. You were a somatic sex coach.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is that? If I were to say, somebody says, what do you do, Bob? And I say, I'm a somatic sex coach. What would I tell them I do?
So basically, I help people have the sex life of their dreams. And to do that, I have people drop into their desires. What are they really desiring? And then I have them feel into their body to figure out what parts of them have resistance to that. And so the somatic is going in and feeling and communicating with all parts of your body to make sure that it's all on board for your desires. So for example, someone might have like a constriction in their heart when it comes to having like deeper intimacy with their partner. And it's like, why is that happening? And so we'll go in and actually have a conversation with their heart. And through that, we might discover that, it's their inner child that's showing up. That's like, oh my gosh, like I might not be loved, or I might be abandoned, or something along those lines. And so it's really looking at the body as a whole and bringing everything online and communicating with it.
So there's a piece of it that's meditative and spiritual. A big piece of it, actually, it sounds like the entire underpinning of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's recognizing as everything is consciousness within your body and bringing it all online to be supportive for, to awaken highest consciousness and deepest love for whatever you are desiring.
Now, when I was a comedian, I used to do this joke that would either get a laugh or people would get upset about it. It's not dirty at all. But I would say there's two kinds of sex. The intimate, vulnerable kind you have with someone you really love, and the real good kind. And women would laugh harder at that joke than men, ironically, which I thought they wouldn't, but they did.
Yeah.
And it really is, the joke actually speaks to two different approaches to sex. One is athletics and performance and just pure, you know, animalistic pleasure. And the other one is involved with connecting to another human being and vulnerability, which, by the way, is vulnerability is the most beautiful and frightening thing there is, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. So that, I would think that a lot of people would come to you with that issue of like, I don't want to be vulnerable. It's too frightening.
Mhm. I mean, that's usually like the underlying thing for most people. It's this fear that comes up, fear of like being fully seen, being fully received. And even when I help people, they want to have a cervical orgasm or a G-spot orgasm, or, men learning how to have multiple orgasms, like all those things, like it comes down to the fear, the vulnerability, which is usually kind of the underlining stuff. And so it's easier for people to disassociate, to not be fully present, because then it's safer for their nervous systems.
Yeah. And it's really, if you open up that much in that way, that's the ultimate in rejection. If you are rejected at some point, you're like, whoa, I just gave it all. And now it's like, what do you mean? I'm
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Because that would be the most frightening part for me. I think it's like, if you here's the phrase, it would be, if you see me really totally that way, you won't love me anymore. That's the fear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that comes up all the time.
Yeah. And so, like the three core things that I have people work on, it's going off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's love, safety, and belonging. And so it's, if you fully see me and I'm not enough, like, or I don't belong, or I'm not what you want me to be, like, man, that's gonna really hurt my heart and like hurt my soul and everything, like, because I just like fully showed up and was vulnerable, and it's not good enough, or it's not safe, or I won't be loved, or I won't belong. And those are the things, like, as humans, we need those.
Yes.
So
And human beings will, I've found that we will do anything to feel particularly safe and loved, even if it's to our detriment. We'll manufacture false belief systems to protect ourselves. We'll act in a certain way that will allow us to not be hurt. We'll do all that stuff because it's so ultimately terrifying. And yet when I've been able to fully be vulnerable in that way, it actually feels amazing. That's like the best part. Mm-hmm. But I certainly, okay, let me just talk about how I think most Americans are raised, like, and I can only speak as a man. I mean, I know a little bit about the way women feel since I've been married a long time and I have daughters. So I understand a little bit more than I did prior to those things. But as a man, it was conquest, numbers, performance. They used to have an expression when I was a teenager of, you get a girl, you're not with them. I got her. I was able to convince her. I tricked her in some way. I acted a certain way, and I got this thing. And then it's gymnastics a little bit, and then size. All these kinds of things that just don't make you feel good about anything, and yet it's in the media. It's everywhere. Knocking down those belief systems must be part of what you're doing also.
Yeah. And, for that, it's a lot of it just coming to self-love and acceptance. And like that, and for women, it's those similar things, but it's like, performance and like size of your breasts, or your, what you're, all those things. And so a lot of it is coming to just a place of like loving and seeing the beauty in ourselves, and not needing it to be like what is shown in porn or the media and all these things that really created, body dysmorphia, or like expectations of how sex should be or sound or look or anything like that, but instead like really normalizing and celebrating the vast diversity that we have within sexuality.
Yeah, it's when I think about how maybe other countries are a little different, other cultures, ours seems to be so off the track into the things we just talked about. And, I've met people from other countries that don't seem to have it either at all, or certainly to the extent that we do here, this idea of conquest and performance and a false sense of what's beautiful. Is that true? I mean, I know you've traveled quite a bit.
Yeah, I spent like the last decade traveling and living all over the world and studying different cultures and having incredible experiences. And it is very, very true. And I think, here in the States, we definitely use sex to sell, but then there's also so much shame and taboo around it. And if it's not like this particular way, like it's, not right, or it needs to be censored or shut down. But when when I'm in like European countries or other places, I see how either, like men and women and friends, like how intimate they can be in a friendship way of just like holding hands or like having their arms touch, and that closeness, that bonding that can happen, or even just like greeting and kissing each other on the cheeks. And it's not something that's sexual, but it's just a form of intimacy, of letting, your nervous system know that you're not alone, and releasing oxytocin through your body. So there's like that side of things, where then also like I saw this a lot in European countries, how nudity was more accepted. And I think that is incredible, because it just teaches people that like, oh my gosh, like my breasts can look like that, not just what is shown on porn, and really creates more body acceptance and love to see the diversity and that type of thing. And I lived with a host family in Spain, and it was so crazy for me to get to see like what it like the way their daughters were being raised, and like the education that they were receiving around like sex and intimacy and birth control, and the awareness around all of that. It's more open, and versus like a taboo, shamed topic that's like hush hush, let's not talk about it, even though it's all over the media and the news type of thing.
Well, there was this idea that there were certain women that were, this is the stupidest word ever. She's a slut. Mm-hmm. She's slutty. Mm-hmm. And then if you would actually speak to these women that were supposedly slutty, and they weren't any different than anybody else, they just were freer with those things, or they were damaged in some other way, and they were using sex as a way to get love that wasn't working, obviously. But just that idea of putting that kind of a label on someone, because I guess, men aren't really called sluts, but there are plenty of, and we're sluttier than women, in my opinion. I mean, I just never liked that word. I just always thought it was kind of stupid. Like, what does that mean? Why is somebody supposedly have to be, shamed for wanting to do something that, by the way, is life energy and how we all got here in the first place? But I think it's a way for parents and religions to control young girls. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, like I help a lot of people like go back to their inner teen and like heal that part of them that was either slut shamed because of their curiosity, or because, like, and it could have been something as simple as like they kissed someone at the school, and like now they got labeled as a slut, when really it's like, okay, really? Like it's this curiosity, this innocence of wanting to explore. And I think what it does is it disconnects us and it disempowers us from our life force energy and like the power that can come with it. And it is, like sex can sell. Sex can be this like incredible life force, life giving, creating energy that's magnetic, that's so attractive. And so if we teach people to be scared of it, to not own it, to not like be in their full body and power, instead that it's not for them, or it's shameful and dirty and wrong and you're going to go to hell or whatever. If like, if you claim your body and your desires, your pleasure, like, oh God, you
Yeah.
know?
Hell must not be that bad if that's
Yeah.
what's going to send you there.
Yeah.
So people come to you. Is it mostly couples that want to work on their relationship, or is it individuals? And how do you work with them, either as a couple or as individuals? How does that work? How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I work with couples, I work with individuals, men, women, the queer community, everybody. Usually I work one-on-one, or I have a group program type of
Mhm.
offering. And so if it's a one-on-one container, it's usually via Zoom, or if someone wants to fly out to Maui, we can have an intensive type of thing. But I'm not sexually intimate or anything like that with people. It's really like coaching and having people like drop into their body, guiding them through a somatic experiencing journey, doing breath work, doing meditation. I create guided self-pleasure practices for people
Oh,
to.
okay. That's what I was wondering about, because
Yeah.
there's a tendency, and I've been married a very long time, and life comes at you with a lot of stuff, and
Mhm.
it gets in the way of just sort of the pure kind of early on relationship stuff that is just completely fun and great and all that stuff. And there's a tendency to kind of put the sex in like a section of your day, or you know not, when stuff is really going bad, it's just not even part of what you're doing,
Mhm.
when life is just coming at you. How do you integrate that back into those situations, particularly in long-term relationships that have a lot of weight on them with life stuff?
I think first is just acknowledging that life is can have a lot of weight and can be really challenging, and not creating shame over the fact that maybe sex isn't like the number one priority right now. And so creating like acceptance and love and understanding for that, for your reality around that, versus shame of it being different than what you expected it to be or what society tells you it should be. So that loving acceptance right there just kind of opens up and creates space for it to integrate and like come in and to focus in. Okay, so what do you really desire? Right, you're desiring more intimacy, more connection, more love. And with a long-term relationship, that can come in so many different ways. Maybe it's even just like communicating, and then from that space of like being able to drop deeper into like the depth of communication, then it's like, all right, now I'm really ready to make love. Or maybe the communication is great and you're on there, but you're like wanting to experience a different type of sex, more wild, a primal sex, or just something new, tantric sex. So then I would create guided practices teaching people, this is how you can move energy through your body and have a full body orgasm or a multiple orgasmic, blissful state, that type of thing. A thing I love to invite people to do is actually schedule sex into their calendar, especially if you're really busy. I know it can sound kind of like not as exciting, like, what, I have to schedule sex? Like, shouldn't it just be spontaneous and wild? Like, sure, you could have that, but also like seeing sex on your calendar, like that's a pretty exciting thing to have scheduled down. Like,
Yeah.
that's how important it is to have like this space of intimacy. And it gets you kind of excited. It gets your whole body and your nervous system, ready for that, where it's like, all right, I'm going to make sure I have, this time where we have plenty of time. We have the house to ourselves. We're going to light candles, take a bath, have, it creates a container for it to be even more special. And having sex dates it's so fun that can come from that.
I like that idea. And I think the only time I've ever done that was when we were trying to have kids. We just went, okay, we have this window of fertility in these days and these hours. And it was like, let's make this happen. And it was
Yeah.
great. It was great. It was actually great just because there was this, sort of beautiful goal in mind. But, since then, I don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't scheduled it. So I'm going to have to get the calendar out after this interview, and we'll now I was years ago, we were in couples therapy, and we were having one of those periods where we just weren't connecting, And the therapist said, what I want you to do, maybe you do this too. He said, I want you to just hold each other and hold hands and talk, but I don't want you to have sex.
Mhm.
I want you to do that for a while, and I want you to connect that way first. And it was really interesting because it got actually kind of a little bit scarier in some ways, because it was just like, what are we? Who are we? Why are we doing? you know? And I'm sure you do that. I would imagine that would be part of it.
Yeah, that is oftentimes, like I'll have, if people are coming to me because they want to have more sex or better sex or like an orgasmic experience, I usually take that off the table. I know that's what you came here for, but let's take that off. And it allows for that foundation of the other things to be in place versus having the pressure. Like, I know if like we cuddle and we do this, that then they're going to want to have sex with me, and your inner child is acting up and is like, this isn't safe. It allows for like that part to show up and realize like, oh, okay, we can have the depth of intimacy and connection without it needing to go there, or without having the pressure that I need to orgasm or whatever it is. And so if that is taken off the table and we implement some of these other skills and practices into it, it allows for the magic to really be there, for the depth to grow, to create a more solid foundation and intimacy.
And when you talk about tantric sex,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know very little about it. I know the word, and I know there's some, it's like a studied way to, and that's probably not the right word, but there's specific things that exercises, I guess would be a better way to put it. Mm-hmm. How did you get into that, and exactly what is it? And can you give me an example of something?
Actually, how I got into it is a pretty interesting story. I discovered porn when I was in about 5th grade. And so
kids are seeing that stuff very early now with cell phones.
Oh, yeah. And I knew how to work the computer better than my mom. Like, I knew how to delete that internet history. So I saw porn, and I remember somehow finding a book like the Kama Sutra and being like, wow, I can't wait until I'm old enough that I can order this and learn this. Because I remember being a kid and being like, seeing porn and being like, well, I think there's something more magical here. And I was raised Catholic, so I had some of like the spiritual like conditioning involved where it's something sacred, a lot of other stuff in it too. But I was like, it's got to be more special than this. And so when I saw the Kama Sutra and Tantra, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to study this one day. And I've known that this is going to be my path since I was a little girl. So that's how my original like introduction. And I forgot about it along the years and was then reintroduced to it when I was doing my yoga teacher training and started studying Tantra. And Tantra is so much more than sex. It's really recognizing the consciousness in everything. So not just this is good and this is bad, but it's all divine. It's all incredible. So instead of creating shame and disconnect for something, it goes into those parts and has loving acceptance for it. And so where, like, let's say some teachings are like sex is bad and wrong, Tantra will go into that and be like, how is this incredible? Versus disassociating, disconnecting from it. And so tantric sex is going in and accepting all parts of yourself, working with the energy, sending the energy through your body, learning how to channel that creative life force through your body to expand your consciousness, to have spiritual experiences through sex and intimacy with yourself or with another, or, with a whole bunch of people. So not creating the shame or what's right or wrong, but instead just bringing that loving acceptance to everything.
I was watching this documentary, part of it, and it was called Sex Magic. Have you seen this thing?
No, but I'm all about the sex magic, so I'm curious. Tell me more.
Well, this is my skewed version, my own personal version. It was some guy who had like a retreat in like Santa Fe or someplace like that. And he was, teaching these things, but he had these multiple girlfriends, and it was this sort of open idea where, he had multiple partners, and but my first feeling was this guy is like conning these women into having, multiple partners, and they're insecure about themselves, and that's why they're going along with it. This is what I was thinking.
Uh-huh.
But then they were talking about like taking a trip together, him and his main girlfriend, whatever it is. Nobody's married or anything like that, which is neither here nor there. And then they were talking about he was going to meet, there were some other women where they were traveling, and they were talking about how do you navigate having all these different people that you want to be intimate with, but you have this main person and you don't want to hurt people's feelings, and how do you schedule things? And because there is a jealousy factor that comes in with people also.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found the whole thing incredibly confusing, and very happy to be this old married guy in a monogamous relationship, because it seems so confusing. I didn't like when I was younger, and it was all over the place in a lot of ways. It was, there was just too much drama and hurt feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the part of human condition that I don't know if you can get past that, but maybe some people can. I don't know.
Well, I mean, first, that's very different than sex magic. So just for everyone catching in or tuning into that part, it's different than sex magic. That's like discovering and talking more about like poly dynamics and open relating and jealousy and that type of thing, which is so real.
Yeah,
and
it's real.
Jealousy is not something that goes away. You can work with it. And I think, when I work with my couples that are, in an open relationship or in poly dynamics, it's not like making the jealousy like, oh my gosh, like I've been, in this open relationship now for 5 years. Like, shouldn't I not be jealous anymore? Like, no, like that's just an emotion that you get to work with.
Okay.
And it's probably a part of you that's like just wanting to feel the love, safety, and belonging. That's where like it can be supportive to be in a monogamous relationship if you don't want to work through those emotions or work with that, if you want to just feel that more security that comes from it. And some people, that's, monogamy is not for them. They, want to have other types of relationships where they can get other needs met and that type of thing. And so, definitely I've seen where people go into more open poly relating dynamics because they don't want to face the deeper forms of intimacy that come from commitment and like, showing up for someone. And it's easier for them to just kind of have these lighter, fun, playful relationships and not actually go deep with someone. And then there's people that can do that and go super deep with all of these people. And so it's up to each person and the container that they are wanting to create. And I wouldn't say that, having an open relationship or a polydynamic makes it it doesn't make it easier. There's more emotions involved. There's other people and everyone's got their own things. And so there's a lot of more processing that comes with it.
Yeah. And who's got time? I'm like, wow. I always, people say, when they talk about men having affairs, I'm like, I need other women that are dissatisfied with who I am. One's plenty. I mean, I do like to laugh about this stuff because it is complicated as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and then so are there people that come to you with actual sexual dysfunction that aren't physiological problems? Obviously, these would be more emotional and psychological issues too.
Mm-hmm. But also physiological. I help women connecting with their menstrual cycle if they're having like severe cramps, that type of thing, trying to get pregnant, incontinence, men with, erectile difficulties or, wanting to last longer, those types of things. Like sometimes it is physiological that come into it too. And so we can work with that. A lot of the times, it is more somatics and based in like the emotional body. And so I work with, all sides, or it's a spiritual thing or a nervous system, a limiting belief and that type of thing. So I get to work with the range of desires that people are having.
It's very courageous, I have to say, because with all the taboos that are on this topic, it's really, I've never talked to anybody that does what you do. So it's really fascinating to me that you went, one that you realized this was going to be your field as a child, really, and then went into it and have explored it on this spiritual level. It's really, really fascinating. Do you find that men and women want different things?
I think it's pretty individualized. It going down to the core, what people are wanting is, again, it's coming back to the love, safety, and belonging. There's different ways of getting that. Perhaps that is, them wanting to have more sex or less sex and more love. It can really vary depending on the person, depending on their love language, depending on the way they give, they receive, and that type of thing. For like the foundation, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Maslow knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
He really did.
Yeah.
What about when you have a situation, and it's not always this way, where one person wants one thing and another person wants something else? I'll give you an example. One person wants an intimate setting that's very connected, and the other person just wants a mechanical release. Not I'm saying every time. I'm just saying, let's say like today
Yeah.
in an hour. And it's like, well, I don't want to do it like that. Well, I don't want to, I don't want to get into a whole thing of being connected. I just, that's a tricky one.
Yeah. So the way I like to look at it is, in this dynamic, it sounds like it's a couple. And so I have people have it be a triangle where, okay, these are your needs, these are my needs, and the relationship needs.
Okay.
And what does that need? And so having like those 3 points where it's like, okay, part of the relationship, like we'll schedule time for we're going to have that deeper, intimate moment so we can have that. Like we can have that sex date where there's that blocked off time where there's going to be so much foreplay and love and connection. And, I also love to just get off real quick because it's a stress release. And so let's also create that because so both of our needs are getting met. And if someone's like, I'm not into that, like I need to have the foreplay. Okay, we're going to honor that. That's okay. And create space for the other person to have a quick release still, where it's not necessary to have that person there or for them to, have the penetrative sex. Maybe they can still be a part of it. But to witness it or to help in some other ways can still be really fun.
Here's a common scenario, and that I think all couples have experienced. Post-coital, I love saying that. Post-coital, man falls asleep, woman's up, feels she's been used. Even though he doesn't feel that way, he's just gone to sleep because there's a big release of energy and men fall asleep a lot. That just happens.
Yeah.
How does that get, how do you deal with that one?
So I think the first thing is acknowledging the science behind it. For a man to ejaculate, it takes a lot of energy and his body literally needs to go and shut down to replenish that energy. So instead of it making like, oh my God, like he doesn't love me or whatever stories our brains want to create, but to acknowledge like, okay, this is like a body response and it's part of it.
Yeah. Well, women can even be energized.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like, I just want to go, let me take a nap. You go clean.
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic, obviously. But.
And so a lot of this actually comes down to the type of orgasm that people are having. And so, if a woman was having a lot of clitoral orgasms, she might also feel depleted after. However, and that's not always the case, but it can be. However, if she was taking all the sexual energy and building it up and circulating it through her body, she could totally feel really, really energized afterwards. And the same thing can happen for men. If they learn to circulate their sexual energy through their body, they can learn how to have non-ejaculatory orgasms. And this wouldn't be something, so there's some Tantra teachers out there that teach men to do this all the time. I don't teach that. I think it's really important for men to have a release, but just to also know that, hey, especially as you get older, like you can like circulate this so you're not so tired because it takes a body is a lot of energy to be able to build it up and release. And so men can do that too, where it's not that they're going to feel really tired after, but instead they'll feel energized, have more clarity and energy to get through, whatever projects they're creating and doing. I think
I did not realize that. I mean, I guess I read about it, but the idea of a non-ejaculating orgasm sounds interesting to me.
mhm.
Never had one of those.
And most people haven't, like,
Yeah.
and it's just oftentimes these two things happen at the same time, but they don't need to. So
Oh,
they're not
okay.
not the same thing. Like it's just our bodies have trained that, and a lot of it being from our conditioning growing up, like have a quick release, like I'm gonna jerk off while someone's not watching real quick so I can like get on with my day. Especially with now porn and all of that, like people are literally wiring their bodies to have that experience. But you can actually, yeah, learn to separate the two and have, mine can have multiple orgasms and keep going and going without
Hmm.
ejaculating.
Have to read a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I mean, it's such an
Yeah.
interesting thing to have this body and this spirit and a mind and try to make them all kind of work together in a way that where you feel really great. That's really what it amounts to blend. They're not separate issues, which is basically what I think what you're helping people to realize and to come to. I want to find out what you studied to kind of learn about this stuff.
I've known that I wanted to focus on women's health and sexuality really since I was a little child. I remember like asking my mom so many questions about where do babies come from? Where do babies come from? I was the oldest, watched her actually have a couple of miscarriages and then had my brother. And so through like elementary school and middle school, once I found out my friends weren't really being told the truth and all of that, I became like the kid on the playground that was like, sex education, like, why are we being lied to about where babies come from? This is the most sacred, magical thing. Like, it really like fired me up.
Okay.
And so I became involved in like the pure sex education programs, all of that. I thought I wanted to be an OBGYN. I went to University of Iowa, was pre-med, worked closely, shadowing different OBs and Planned Parenthood, working within the different clinics. And along that way, I also realized like I care more about prevention and education and making like a difference before people like come into the clinic and being like, I have this pain and like needing to prescribe a pill. It was like, okay, you have that pain because you had this trauma that needs to be integrated and like working from that space. So I then switched to public health and I focused all on women's health and sexuality. And then over the last 10 years, I've studied and traveled around the world studying different cultures and practices, more of like the ancient shamanic, tantric teachings from all kinds of different cultures all around the world. And then I also studied at the Tantric Institute of Integrated Sexuality and focused on women's sexuality, tantric sex, and also yoni eggs, which is a Taoist practice of women putting a crystal egg in their vagina and doing exercises with. So it's kind of like yoga, but for your vagina.
Well, I just had a Taoist guy on my show last week.
Awesome.
We didn't talk about that part, but that was he studied China at some temple over there for about 5 years. So it was a really interesting story that how ancient this stuff is because people have been having sex since the beginning of time, obviously. You were telling me that you were doing some work with wilderness adventure. What is it? Tell me what you're doing. And now you're integrating these two things. So that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So once I graduated college, I got my dream job, or so I thought was my dream job, being one of the sex educators for the state of Colorado. And my time there, I really got into hiking and backpacking and climbing and whitewater rafting and stand-up paddleboarding and doing all this stuff. And I became really inspired to inspire women to get out and do that. And so that just became my passion of like, wow, what happens when we connect with nature, when we're outside in nature? Like, I just had so much healing that happened through that, of like just being outside, having my bare feet on the earth, like in the sun, like all of that is just so transformational. And that's been kind of an aspect of my life where I go back and forth. Like, do I care about like sex education, or do I just want to be outside hiking all day and like working with like medicinal plants and gardening and doing that type of thing? And so I have finally come to the place with I'm merging these two, where it's like, all right, we can work the same sexual energy and things that I teach people to channel and move through their body. You can do that also with earth energy, and how that can be like really healing to go out for a hike in nature and just to be present, to experience the meditation, the healing, the oneness that comes from just being outdoors and reconnecting with nature, with your true nature. And so now I'm having, backpacking adventures where it's, working with a couple and going out into nature and having them do some of these practices, doing the breath work, or an individual, just going out and using the nature, the earth to heal and support in the somatic sex work as well.
I love that. And I can speak to that from my own, my wife in particular is a gardener of the highest talents, but that she takes her shoes off, gardens barefoot, and tells me when she comes in after gardening, she's a different person. She's on this elevated place, and she said she feels, and I think anyone can feel this. You feel a magnetic connection through your feet. There's something very very profound about that, and we've as a society we've distanced ourselves from nature, unfortunately. But not only do you get that sort of magnetic, kind of electromagnetic connection going through your feet up through your body, but time moves a little bit differently too, and you're not as rushed. And so you're back to this place. I guess it's the place of where we kind of belong naturally. So I totally get what you're doing. It's just fantastic that you're able to integrate those two things. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely like, a new thing. I don't see anyone else doing this. And that's why I think for a while I was like, I can't do that. I had this, limiting belief that's like, who's going to want to go outside barefoot and hike and, sit by a waterfall, but then also talk about sex. And then I was like, oh wait, who wouldn't want to do that?
Right. Well, exactly. Who wouldn't? Yeah. I'm trying to get my wife to do the podcast and talk about gardening and as a meditation and spiritual practice, but she doesn't want to do that. Just because she doesn't want to be, in a public view that way.
Yeah.
But I'll get her to do it one of these days.
Yeah. I'm on board to listen to that. I'm all about the gardening. And I think, us just getting our hands in the dirt, connecting with nature and the cycles in that way it's so healing and empowering to recognize that. And then to also recognize the cycles that we go through as humans of, transformation, planting our seeds. What are we trying to create? What are, working with women and their menstrual cycles, each cycle of like, you can use this energy to create a life, yes, or you can use it to plant some seeds and, what are you going to create with it?
Glad you're working, a lot with women in particular, because I think this is the new, finally, as a society, we're coming around to seeing the power that's there and the beauty and in all that's been, shut down and made second class for so long. And having daughters, I'm really into it. I'm like, don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. Just go do it. I always tell my kids that, I'm like, don't do anything to please other people. If it's not pleasing you, don't do it. And it's but they get stopped, or there are attempts to stop them, and they tell me about it. And I'm like, tell that person to go fuck themselves, because they don't know what they're talking about. So I always encourage them to be not rude, but bold.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Take up space, go after their dreams.
Exactly. And good for you for pushing that. I think that's important stuff. I was just remembering when my children were little, I dug a hole in the backyard, and I filled it with water and made this mud thing for them. And they stayed out there in that mud hours and hours, filthy, dirty mud. It was fantastic. And I don't find it dirty. I find it, healing, but they loved it. It was one of the happiest memories I have of them as kids, to see them playing in mud. I just thought that was the greatest. I was like, how come I couldn't do that?
Yeah. I'm imagining him doing that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that
Yeah.
sounds incredible.
I got in there with them at that point, but it was, they're little, so they get a lot more mud because they, but so folks, if you have a place to make some mud, I'm going to encourage you to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to pay anybody to give you a mud bath. Just do it yourself.
Yeah. And like if you have someone to do it with too, like take that mud and rub it all over each other's bodies. You can have a mud massage.
Ooh, yeah.
Fun too. Get some
mud massage
in there. Yeah.
I think I have a new business. A mud massage guy. Yes. Well, it'll be the place they can come. I'm not going to massage them. Yeah. I got my own people to massage, not strangers. So how do people, if they want to use your services or learn more too, because we're all about education here at the Exploding Human and, getting the knowledge out there, help us to connect more to this topic because it's great stuff, books, websites, whatever people might benefit from. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. So my website is brittneybliss.com. You can head there, and I usually have some type of free practice or something that you can get for free. I love offering free content.
Okay, let's make sure they know how to spell Brittney because there's a couple of different ways, and yours is different than what I thought it was.
It is. So it's Brittney, Brittney, Bliss, BLISS.com.
BrittneyBliss.com. Go there now. I mean, not yet. As soon as this is over.
Or Instagram is at Brittney.bliss.
Okay.
And I had my main business account where I had all kinds of free content and education and information. That was at Sex with Bliss, but Instagram just shut that down. So I'm in a process of, creating a new channel where I'm going to offer stuff. I'm thinking I'm going to create my own private network so I can continue to provide free resources and education, but without having a censorship ban and that type of thing.
What are they censoring? Just the word sex? Is that really the red flag for these people? Like an AI kind of logarithm that just chases people down and shuts them down just for that horrible word?
Yeah, pretty much. Because also my content, I was in my captions and all of that, like I tried to make it as PG as I could. So I would even have to like space out like pleasure with spaces in between it, because otherwise the algorithm would catch that and would I was shadow banned for a while, and then they shut me down because I have sex in my name.
Yeah, they probably think it's, because all the prostitution and porn places have used similar words, but they don't have, they're not doing the same thing, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's what they're going on. There's no human going to your page and going, oh no, we can't have this. I don't think it's humans. I think it's computers.
Yeah. That's it.
So they can do that, and then there'll be books and resources to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
Where's this Tantric Institute that you talked about? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so it's an online program. My teacher is Layla Martin. So she also has a phenomenal YouTube page. You can go and learn all kinds of information from her. But yeah, it was an online program, but she's based out of LA.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was online. So anybody can go to that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, thanks so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna go to. I did go to your website and look through it. I did do that. It's because I need to have a little bit of information before I talk.
Yeah.
And then I think after this, I may book a date on the calendar with my wife if she's open for that. Yes. See how that goes.
It's fun. And also I want to it's okay if there's some resistance to that too, or some nerves or fear, because it could be like, oh my gosh, like what is that gonna, like this pressure of it. And so I just invite you to have fun with it.
Yeah. I'm not doing that. I got something to do Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And good luck to you in your wilderness and somatic sex coaching adventures. I think it's very valuable work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor to be on the show. Thank you, everyone else, for tuning in and saying yes to listening to this magic. I really
Yes.
appreciate it, and I'm honored and grateful to get to share this wisdom.
Big thanks for listening in to The Exploding Human. Once again, please check out the website, theexplodinghuman.com. If you'd like to donate, you will have access to some extra content. There's also the Exploding Human with Bob Nickman YouTube channel and a Facebook page for The Exploding Human. Big thanks to Brittney Bliss for a wonderful interview, and you folks have a great day. Thank you.